There's a psychological experiment where they give kids one marshmallow and say, wait 15 minutes without eating it. And you get two. Most kids fail. But what if there was a guy so good at this that he could walk past infinite marshmallows and feel nothing? Not willpower. He literally rewired his brain so desires couldn't touch him. The result? He became untouchable by everything that makes us miserable. Rejection, loss, failure, poverty, complete immunity to suffering. This wasn't some modern self-help guru. This was Diogenes of Sinope 2,400 years ago. And his method was so radical, so effective, that it terrified everyone around him. Here's what Diogenes figured out that we're still missing. Every single thing you want is a chain. Your dream house. Chain. Your perfect relationship. Chain. That promotion, that car, that validation from strangers on the internet. Chains. 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 But here's the twist. Diogenes didn't just avoid wanting things. He actively trained himself to want nothing. There's a difference. Avoiding is still thinking about it but wanting nothing. That's freedom at the cellular level. Picture this. You're walking through ancient Athens and you see this guy living in a clay jar, not a house, a literal storage jar. People are pointing and laughing. Does he care? Not even slightly. Someone steals his one possession, a wooden bowl. He throws away his backup cup and says, "A child drinking from his hands just taught me I still own too much." This sounds insane until you realize what's happening. While everyone else is stressed about their reputation, their money, their status, Diogenes is genuinely free. And I mean free. Free. No mortgage, no boss, no social anxiety, no comparing himself to others. He's living in a cheat code. Now here's where it gets wild. Alexander the Great, the guy who conquered most of the known world, heard about this homeless philosopher and had to meet him. He finds Diogenes sunbathing and says, "I am Alexander the Great. Ask me for anything." Diogenes looks up and says, "Yeah, move. You're blocking my sun." Alexander's bodyguards reach for their swords, but Alexander stops them and says, "If I were not Alexander, I would want to be Diogenes." Think about that. The most powerful man on earth just admitted he'd trade places with a homeless guy. Why? Because Alexander owned everything but was owned by everything. Diogenes owned nothing and was owned by nothing. But wait, how does someone actually become this free? Because this isn't just philosophy. Diogenes had a method. He wasn't just some lazy dropout. He was performing advanced psychological warfare on himself. Every time he felt a desire, he'd do the opposite. Wanted comfort? He'd sleep on cold ground. Craved respect? He'd act like a dog in public. Felt embarrassed? He'd lean into it harder. He literally called himself Diogenes the dog, and would bark at people who annoyed him. When someone insulted him at a dinner party, he peed on them. Not because he was crazy, because he was systematically destroying his ego's ability to be hurt. Think about your worst nightmare: public humiliation. Diogenes would masturbate in the marketplace and say, "If only I could cure hunger by rubbing my belly." Social rejection? He'd intentionally act weird until people avoided him, then celebrate having more peace. Financial ruin? He threw away money and called it useless metal. He was basically doing exposure therapy on steroids, decades before psychology existed, and it worked. His students described him as the happiest person they'd ever met. Not because good things happened to him, literally nothing good happened to him, but because he'd made himself bulletproof to needing good things to happen. Here's the part that'll mess with your head. Modern neuroscience backs this up. We now know that wanting something activates the same brain regions as addiction. The dopamine hit comes from anticipating the reward, not getting it. That's why you feel amazing buying something online, but bored when it arrives. Diogenes somehow figured out how to turn off that entire system. He short-circuited the wanting mechanism itself. When you don't want anything, you can't be disappointed. When you expect nothing, everything becomes a bonus. When you need nothing, you already have everything that matters. But here's what really happened in that brain of his. Every time he rejected a desire, he was literally rewiring his neural pathways. Each time he chose discomfort over comfort, pain over pleasure, he was training his brain to find satisfaction in the rejection itself. He was getting high off not getting high. The crazy part, it's still possible today, but nobody talks about it because there's no money in selling you nothing. Every guru, every course, every self-help book is trying to give you something. Add this habit, buy this program, follow this system. Diogenes is the only guy in history who said, actually, you need less. Way less. Try nothing. And before you think this is about becoming a homeless person, it's not. It's about becoming unbreakable. When you don't need anything, you can't be manipulated by anyone. When you don't fear losing anything, you can't be controlled by anything. When you don't crave validation, you can speak truth without consequences. Imagine walking into your job, knowing you could quit tomorrow and be perfectly fine. Imagine talking to your crush, knowing their rejection literally cannot hurt you. Imagine losing everything you own and feeling ... relief. That's not psychopathy. That's what Diogenes achieved through systematic training. The modern world runs on your desires. Every ad, every algorithm, every social media platform is designed to make you want something you don't have. They're literally farming your dissatisfaction. But what if you could opt out entirely? What if you could walk through this world like Diogenes walked through Athens? Untouchable, unbreakable, genuinely free. Here's where most people get it wrong. They think Diogenes was just a weird homeless guy who got lucky. But this man was a philosophical genius who understood human psychology better than therapists today. He realized that suffering isn't caused by what happens to you. It's caused by the gap between what you have and what you want. So he eliminated the gap. Not by getting everything he wanted, but by wanting nothing at all. Think about the last time you were truly happy. I bet it wasn't when you finally got something you'd been craving. It was probably a random moment when you weren't thinking about what you lacked. Maybe watching a sunset, laughing with friends, or just feeling content for no reason. That's what Diogenes felt all the time. But here's the kicker. He didn't just stumble into this enlightenment. He trained for it like an athlete. And his training methods were absolutely brutal. When winter came, he'd roll around naked in the snow. When people mocked him, he'd mock them back harder. When someone threw him out of their house, he'd thank them for the lesson in detachment. He turned every negative experience into a celebration of his freedom from needing things to be different. Picture this. You lose your job tomorrow. Most people would panic about mortgage payments, their reputation, their future. Diogenes would probably laugh and say, finally, less responsibility. Your relationship ends. While you're crying into ice cream, Diogenes would be celebrating his return to solitude. Your friends abandon you. He'd see it as clarity about who was real and who was using him. This isn't toxic positivity or fake everything happens for a reason nonsense. This is something much deeper. Diogenes had reprogrammed his entire value system. Where normal people see loss, he saw liberation. Where others see failure, he saw freedom from the burden of success. And the wildest part, other philosophers of his time couldn't touch him intellectually. Plato called him Socrates gone mad, which was actually a compliment. When Plato defined humans as featherless bipeds, Diogenes plucked a chicken and said, behold, Plato's human. The guy was sharp as hell, but he used his intelligence to escape the prison that intelligence usually creates. Most smart people overthink everything. They analyze, optimize, strategize themselves into misery. Diogenes took his massive brain and used it to think his way out of thinking. He became the smartest person in the room by caring the least about proving it. But here's what really separates Diogenes from every other philosopher, ancient or modern. Most of them talked about virtue and wisdom, while living normal lives with normal attachments. Diogenes actually lived his philosophy. He wasn't teaching theory, he was demonstrating results. When pirates captured him and tried to sell him as a slave, he pointed to a rich man in the crowd and said, "Sell me to him, he needs a master." The audacity broke everyone's brain so hard, they just let him go. The man who owned nothing couldn't be owned by anyone. And this brings us to the real secret. Diogenes didn't just reject material possessions, he rejected the entire social game. Status, reputation, approval, fitting in, all of it. He understood that these invisible chains are stronger than any physical ones. Most people are slaves to what others think about them. Diogenes made himself immune to other people's opinions by having no opinions to defend. You know what's really wild? Modern research on happiness confirms everything Diogenes figured out 2,400 years ago. Studies show that people who prioritize intrinsic values, relationships, personal growth, contribution, are happier than those who chase extrinsic rewards like money, fame, or status. But Diogenes went even further. He showed that you don't even need the intrinsic stuff if you can find contentment in pure existence itself. Think about your anxiety right now. What's causing it? Probably some gap between your current reality and your desired reality. Your bank account, your relationships, your body, your achievements. Something isn't where you want it to be. Diogenes would look at that anxiety and say, "You're suffering because you believe in a story about how things should be different. But what if they shouldn't be? What if this moment, exactly as it is, with all its imperfections and limitations, is actually perfect? Not because it's objectively perfect, but because wanting it to be different is the only thing making it imperfect." So yeah, now you know why a guy who lived in garbage had more freedom than any billionaire today. He didn't escape the game by winning it. He escaped by refusing to play. That's going to cost you 1 subscribe. Or tell me in the comments, what's the one thing you think you could never give up? Bet Diogenes would have thrown it away on day 1. If you want to see how this connects to modern psychology and why we're all basically addicted to wanting things, this video right here breaks down the science behind why less really is more.